Hello everyone, would like to welcome you all to the platform of Ecoholics. Recently, UPSC conducted IES, that is Indian Economic Services Examination. And here we are going to be decoding the General Studies paper. In particular, we are going to be focusing on the history aspect of GS. Basically, we have 4 questions altogether. They are from history, polity, economy, and geography aspect. So we are going to be decoding the history component of GS paper. So in total, we had 1 question from history, like always, and this question number 1 had 5 subparts. So we have, you can see, 5 questions. You have to answer all the following questions in 200 words each. And the most important thing is, the best part about this year's paper, that is 2025 IES paper, was that all the prominent themes were touched by UPSC once again. So we had 2 questions from ancient. One was from very prominent topic, that is Buddhism, and one was from Gupta age. Then we had 1 question particularly from South India, culture aspect, we can say early medieval history, the confluence of the ancient and medieval history, I would say it was there. Then we had proper question from medieval, that is disintegration or decline of Mughal Empire. Very important question, very important theme. And then we had a question on modern Indian history. So it was on moderate and extremist, I would say, formation of Indian National Congress. It was pertaining to that. Now, the best thing was, I would like to discuss with you that I was amazed to see that there was no question on Gandhian movement, and from the medieval part, they did not touch upon Akbar aspect. Because if we look at the past 5 years trend, you will find questions coming from Akbar, position of women during Akbar, or his policies. But now they've shifted to Aurangzeb, so this was a big change. And moreover, I would like to share one more insight which I drew from here. That was, like, you look at this topic. Now, disintegration of the Mughal Empire, it is at the cusp of medieval and modern history. Okay, so you can't keep this very topic entirely into the modern or entirely into the medieval history. So this was a very interesting thing that this question was there. Of course, question number 5, that is moderate extremism. This is properly from the modern Indian history. Buddhism, Jainism, and Gupta, they're properly from the ancient. But if you talk about this Chola, it is ancient and medieval, some aspects of both. And disintegration of Mughal is basically medieval and the modern. So this is a very interesting insight which we have seen. So I'm going to be discussing all these 5 questions, how we are supposed to answer them, how do we properly structure them. That is the most important aspect we are going to be focusing upon. Before I even, go into the deep discussion, I would like to tell you that since you all know, at Ecoholics, we have a dedicated course for this entire IES examination. And during the course, since I was taking this history part, so I would like to tell you that we had a deep discussion on all these themes. I would like to show you some snippets from the course as well. Like, we did discuss Buddhism, what were the causes of the origin of the Buddhism. And I did mention there that it's a very, very important topic. So in the course itself, I did tell the students that we are going to be expecting question from there. Similarly, Gupta age, when we were discussing, we did talk about that it's a very important topic, so we can expect direct question, and we did get a direct question of the Gupta age. Then we did discuss about the Cholas, their temple, it's a part of their cultural aspect. And when we were talking about the INC International Congress, it was class on 7th April, as you can see that. We did discuss about the moderate phase, about the extremist phase, what were the differences. We did talk about that in elaborate detail. So I'm not saying that, we have got all the questions directly from here. What I am trying to tell you is that whatever we have studied in the class, in that limited, bunch of the classes we dedicated on history, a lot of themes have helped students to write good answers in the examination. Anyways, on this note, let's now, discuss about these various questions, these 5 questions. How in the first place are we supposed to answer these questions? Let's try to talk about them. So we will be starting from this question from the ancient history, that is Buddhism and Jainism pe hai, the rise, reasons for the phenomenal growth of Buddhism. So in a way, if I simplify this thing, it's a question on origin of Buddhism, that why in the first place we have seen the rise of the Buddhism. So that's a question pertaining to the rise of Buddhism as we have seen in the ancient Indian history. So it's regarding that. So when we talk about that, so let me tell you, whenever there is a discus, this directive word, you have to understand that there is a kind of debate, but the debate has to be backed with certain evidences, and you have to focus on various perspectives, allowing to go for a proper logical argument. So discuss में आपको make sure करना है कि हर एक dimension आप bring out करो. We have seen such questions in UPSC Civil Services examination and even state pieces examination as well. So you have to understand that it's a very important theme, as we call it. So you always start with a proper intro. So if I have to write an intro on this, what can be a good intro? Introduction can be like, Buddhism, about the Buddhism founder, you can write that, in the 6th century BC, we have seen it emerged, it emerged at the time when we have a socio-religious churn in the Indian society. Why do I say that? Because the society had very much rigid Varna system, which was there, very much prevalent. So the phenomenal growth of the Buddhism is because of response to the socio-religious inequalities, and there was a lot of rigidities prevailing at that particular time. So you got to understand this point very much precisely. So whenever we talk about the intro, we have to understand this point very much clearly. समझ आ गया? Having said that, then of course we start giving the various pointers over here. So pointers can be as follows, like first is reaction to the orthodoxy which we had, like Brahmanical orthodoxy we can call it. We had superiority of the Brahmanas. We had very much complicated or complex Vedic rituals which were there, and it alienated the masses. Now that's a very important thing. A lot of people did not feel connection with that, because now rituals were not worshipping the nature. They were very much priest dependent. They were expensive, they were complicated. So that is one thing. Second is about the language and the teaching. So you have to understand that Sanskrit was the language of the elite. So all the religious literature like Vedas were in Sanskrit. But Buddhism preached what? They preached the language of the masses like Pali and the Prakrit. So they were understood by the common people, and hence Buddhist philosophy reached the common people very much easily, because all the literature was in Pali, language. And here you can give example as well if you want, like Pitaks, 3 Pitaks, Sutta Pitak, Vinay Pitak, Abhidhamma Pitak, or even you can write three Pitakas. The main literature when we see in the Buddhism, it was composed in the language of the masses, that is Pali. We also saw that rigid Varna system was there. So caste system basically was very much rigid. Now it was based on the birth, and Buddhism rejected this system, and Buddhism preached equality and moral conduct. So they focus more on the karma rather than where you are born. So these are very much important factors which have led to the rise of Buddhism. We did discuss this in the class as well, because whenever we studied Buddhism and Jainism, these heterodox sects which came up in the 6th century BC, we always try to understand that why in the first place did they emerge. Alright, so it is not that 100% credit has to be given to someone who has led a particular sect, or who has started a particular sect, but what is more important is we always have to focus upon the prevailing circumstances. वहां पे परिस्थितियां क्या थी, अगर आपको उसके बारे में पता है तभी आप उसको अच्छे से डिकोड कर सकते हो, ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. Then we talk about the ethical opposition to the animal sacrifices. Now that's very much interesting, because Buddhism condemned animal killing, and they were promoting ahimsa also. So this actually was appealing, the conscience of a lot of people. It was of course simple. So 4 noble truths, if you see about, or 8-fold path. So what we talk about, that in a way it has attracted a lot of intellectuals of its time. So this is one thing we have to understand. And finally, it had a lot of institutional support, royal support also. Why do I say royal support? We have seen various Buddhist councils. Buddhist councils supported by Kala Shoka, he was a king, Ajashatru was a king, Ashoka was a king, Kanishka was a king. So various Buddhist councils were supported by different kings, and that was a great thing. Even Ashoka got converted. So state patronage was massive to Buddhism, and it also he also started system in which he used to set Dhamma Mahamatras, outside India, and they did spread the message as well. So that was actually great. Even the institution of Dhamma, the policy of the Dhamma was very much based on the Buddhist principles. So that is one thing we have to understand. They had proper monastic order, that is Sanghas. So in Sanghas we had people living there, meditating there. In Sanghas we had like, viharas and chaityas. So in viharas people used to stay, in chaityas people used to worship. So all these things could be incorporated in this particular answer. It was not a very difficult answer, I would say. So to conclude, so you also need to write a basic conclusion. So when you write a conclusion, you can simply say that Buddhism grew rapidly, not merely as a religion, but a socio-cultural revolution. So we had a compassionate, rational or egalitarian worldview. And the best part was that we have seen that deep structural changes in the Indian society after the later Vedic age were also reasons of rise of Buddhism, the phenomenal growth which it has witnessed. It can be rooted to that as well. So that is how you have to do justice to this question. Easy. So I would say amongst all the 5 questions, this was a very direct question being asked. So even if there's a question on the rise of Jainism, because it is also contemporary, almost at the same time these religions are both rising, and you can give these reason more or less for Jainism as well. So when I was teaching these religions, in the ancient class, I did mention this thing that more or less the reasons are same. So you can go for that particular technique. Okay, moving ahead. Now we have a question number 2, that is analyze the socio-economic conditions during Gupta age. So now there are 2 things. One is what we are being asked, socio-economic conditions during which time Gupta age. So firstly, you have to know that when was the Gupta age, there in India. Secondly, you have to know that you don't have to write only social or only economic. You have to write about the social plus economic. Now that is one thing you have to be very clear about. A lot of students do commit this mistake, that they will either focus more on the social or more on the economical aspect. You have to focus on both. And in analysis, you are expected to break a particular issue into constituent parts. Like you write about the socio, you write about the economic, and that is how you are supposed to answer a particular question. So that's why I've told you that what analyze means. He or she, that is, you are expected to break a particular issue or break a particular topic into the constituent parts so that you can do justice to all the parts. That is why analyze is there. Anyway, so having said that, when we talk about the intro, a perfect intro, or I would say a decent intro, can be that, from 3rd to 6th century AD or Common Era CE in India, we have seen Gupta age, which is also termed as Golden Age. So any question comes from Gupta, you can mention that it was a golden age of, Indian subcontinent or Indian history. And we saw remarkable progress in various fields. So it was a period of cultural and intellectual flourishing, and something like this you can frame. That's it. Now, I'm not saying that there can't be another answer, because it's a subjective paper. So you are supposed to write anything which is relevant. So that is absolutely fine. If you want to write something else which is relevant, you can do that. Moving ahead. So firstly, we focus on the social condition. Now, social condition mein what all other things? Learning was there, education was there, what was the status of the women, how was the caste system like? So all these kind of things you have to focus on. For example, the practice of Brahmadaya, tax-free land grants to Brahmin was there. It did strengthen their economic and social status. Now that is one thing. The Varna system became rigid. That is another thing. Even Sanskrit became a language of the elite literature, and Sanskrit was very much prominent. For example, you can give example of Kalidasa. So Kalidasa has composed so much, Shakespeare of India as he is called, and be it Meghadutam or Abhigyan Shakuntalam, so many poems and dramas he has composed, that is all in Sanskrit. So in this golden age, we have to always understand about the society that, okay, Sanskrit is reaching great heights, learning is reaching great heights, but at the same time, Sanskrit still was the language of the elite. Not everyone was supposed to speak Sanskrit or learn Sanskrit, and caste system was now very much rigid. So you have to focus on these aspects of society. Status of women is declining. Now that's a very important aspect, because they were confined to the families, education was very much restricted, and even like dowry or child marriage, sati, they were observed in the society, which is very much derogatory. Gupta society, as we call it, we have seen, great learning centers like Nalanda. It was set up by Guptas itself, and Takshila, which was there earlier, it was also a prominent hub of knowledge. So till 5th century, I would say Takshila was there. Later on Hunas did do damage to that. So it was actually great. So you are supposed to focus on these aspects, social aspects may, you have to focus on these. Got it? So once you are focused on this, because see, you have to finish your answer in 200 words. Always remember this thing. 200 words पे कितना लिखोगे? So 200 words में you have to be very much selective with your focus areas. So you focus on these areas, then you come to the economic conditions. So economic conditions में you have to focus on what? Basically, the trades and all. So you can see that we saw agricultural expansion. Why? agriculture was still the economic backbone. And we have seen more and more area was brought under the agriculture. That is the important thing. Forced labor, unfortunately, was there, so feudal exploitation was there as well. Internal trade flourished. We had well-developed routes, Uttarapath, Dakshinapath, these were there. Guilds were there. They were very much active. Guilds means, like we have certain, like goldsmith is there, ironsmith is there. So they have certain, they collaborate with each other in a way. Then they did have, coin. So currency is very much important in economy. So you have to mention about the dinar had high priority. Silver, copper coins were also there, and circulation declined during the later Gupta's time, which indicate economic strain was there. So you focus on agriculture, you focus on currency, you focus on trade. So economic condition में mainly यही चीजें हैं, agriculture, trade, and currency. Getting it? So you even that land grant wala point in the previous part, as I discussed about the Brahmadaya, so you can put it under the economy as well. That is absolutely fine. So here we are focused on like learning aspect, position of the women, and caste system. Here we are focused on agriculture, trade, and currency. So technically 3 dimension in each we have addressed. That is good to go. And later on you can write, that Gupta age has certainly saw links between social structure and economic power. So this is important. Why? Because we have to relate both. Because socio-economic bola usne. And we saw rise of the wealth and cultural growth was there, but feudalism was also rising. And we have seen that this certainly laid the foundation to the medieval period, which will be following that. No doubt after Gupta, Harsha came, but after Harsha, we have seen tripartite struggle and, the entering of India into the medieval history. So you can certainly, relate both the points together. So that is how you were supposed to answer this very question. Again, I'm saying this is not the perfect answer, but this can be a decent answer for this particular question. Got it? Then the question number 3 we talk about, and that is about administrative and cultural achievement of Chola Empire. Now again, you see what we have here, 2 things are there, administration and culture. So I know one thing for sure, that a lot of students will commit or may have committed this mistake of focusing on one aspect. Somebody will be focusing only on the temple, somebody will focus only on the administration. Most people do have the tendency when it comes to the Cholas, they do focus on temple architecture, Brideshwara temple, which is great. But it does not mean that you will just focus on one aspect. You have to focus on all the aspects together, and that is the most important thing. So the Chola Empire is no doubt, in a way, when we talk about the efficient administration, it is great. And it has great cultural contributions. When we talk about the temple architecture, sculpture, literature, everything was great. So you can frame intro like this. And then you come to administrative achievements, and later we'll talk about the cultural. Simple. So administrative mein kya hai? If you know, that is great. If you don't know, that you can skip as well. That Uttaramerur inscription tells us about the grassroots democracy there. King was central and, supported by the council of ministers. Then you focus on provincial administration, that we had various provinces, mandalams. Mandala were divided into kotams, and then we had nadus, that is district, and then we had urs. So you're telling a hierarchy in the administration, which is great. On top of that, we had village assemblies also. Then we can talk about the revenue system, that land revenue was mainly, they were focusing, and because land revenue was very important, they did have tax on the salt, forest, different areas as well. So you can focus, when we talk about administration, you can focus on these things. You can name a few officers if you know as well. But administrative achievement may, you can simply say that they did have a functional kind of, I would say, king was there. So they did have democratic elements in their overall administration, which is actually great. And we do have, Kodavalai system also. So basically here we have seen, draws being taken out of a pot. So in order to elect someone at the local level. So that is also great. So, these elements are certainly telling us a great deal about the Chola administration. So when we talk about the, Cholas, always be very much clear that, they had some great systems, and we still, get inspired from those systems, which is actually great. So, you just have to understand these points. So, because see, it's a subjective paper. It's all about how many good points you certainly can give. So if you are able to, give these points, then it will certainly be giving you good marks, no doubt about that. So always remember that Kudavulai system can be a great, addition over there. When you talk about the cultural, no doubt you have to talk about the temples. Temple architecture, especially Dravidian architecture, has been taken to great heights. Videshwar temple is the UNESCO World Heritage Site. Okay, so temples were great centers of culture. You can mention, because culture achievement mein culture you mention and you underline this. We have seen sculptures, for example, Nataraja idol. It is great when you talk about this. Tamil literature flourished, no doubt, but at the same time, Sanskrit was also encouraged. So both did rise. We have seen overseas cultural links also. Indian culture, art, it all was promoted towards Southeast Asia. Why? Because they had great naval supremacy also. So Navy was very, very strong when we talk about the Raja. So these are the things you have to focus upon. So no doubt that you have to write in 200 words only, but try to incorporate these things in your answer, which can be very much useful. So 200 words doesn't mean always 200 words. You can write in 180, 190 words also, because time constraint is always there. So 300, because 3 hours may you have to do justice to all the 4 components like history, polity, economy, geography. It's not that easy. So you can simply conclude that Chola Empire did lay a strong foundation of well-organized state with deep cultural roots. That's one thing. Their administrative innovations and temple-based cultural model influenced not only South Indian society, but also we have a rich legacy in the Indian history when we talk about the Cholas. So no doubt, even I say that Dravidian architecture did reach great heights during Cholas, and still we have these temples, which is great to have. Having said that, now we come on this question number 4. Question number 4, that is about the Mughal Empire, but end of Mughal Empire, that how far was Aurangzeb responsible? Now remember here, the most important thing is you have to focus on how far likha hai, how far. If I rephrase that, it means to what extent was Aurangzeb responsible? Yeah, to what an extent was Aurangzeb responsible? It is not saying that Aurangzeb was responsible. It is asking you to tell that to what an extent you think that Aurangzeb was responsible. So question in a way is saying that Aurangzeb was not truly responsible. So you have to see on both the sides. So we have to focus on, no doubt that we have to focus on Aurangzeb's role in the decline, and we also have to focus on other factors which were responsible for the disintegration of Mughal Empire. Simple. So the answer will be based in 18th century. No doubt about that. 18th century pata hai na, 1700 to 1800 ke beech mein. So what happened during this time? We have to focus there. So Aurangzeb was the last significant Mughal ruler, we can simply say. While the Mughal ruler has been disintegrating after his reign, after his time, after his rule, but thorough assessment reveals, or proper analysis reveals, that both his personal contribution and structural, socio-economic and external challenges that compounded after his death were responsible for the decline of the Mughal Empire. This is how you have to frame such a answer, because in the intro you are giving a you're giving us glimpse of what you're going to be writing ahead. So you have to be very much careful in what you write and how you frame it. Then you focus on Aurangzeb's role in decline. So you can simply say about his religious intolerance, alienation of allies, because he did reimpose jizya on non-Muslims, and destruction of temples. We do talk about his orthodoxy alienated Hindus, especially Rajputs, who were strong allies of Mughals earlier. He was not able to accommodate Marathas diplomatically. So Maratha intense this resistance was there. And then you separately make a point on Deccan campaigns. They were though against Marathas only. So we have seen, it is also known as Deccan ulcer. So you can mention about this thing, Deccan ulcer of Aurangzeb. Why? Deccan ulcer basically means that he was not able to conquer the Deccan. He did spend a lot of resources and it was all futile exercise. So you do mention about this thing, that he drained his treasury and weakened his military strength. So yeah, if you ask me here, these are the points which tells us he was responsible. Religious intolerance is there. He's not accommodating proper allies. Against the Marathas, this Deccan ulcer thing was there, which is in a way telling us that Aurangzeb had a role to play in the decline of Mughal Empire, right? But was he solely responsible? No, he was not the sole he was not the sole reason. Why? Because we have weak successor. Bahadur Shah, Jahandar Shah, Farooq Shah, they are all weak successors, don't have political acumen at all. We had a lot of regional powers, like Marathas became stronger after his death, Sikhs became stronger, Jat, Rajput, they all became stronger. Not only that, we had successor states also, like all the Mughal governors of Hyderabad, of Awadh, of Bengal, they also rose after his death. So these are the successor states. So Hyderabad under Nizam, Awadh under Burhanul Mulk, Bengal under Murshid Ali Khan, they are rising. So you don't need to go in detail, we just mention this. Jagirdari crisis was there. because there were fewer Jagirs and more Mansabdar, so there was corruptions and they were not happy at all. The Jagirs allotment was very much delayed. So all these things are there. And then of course we have, growing economic and political intervention by European trading power, especially British. So British did become slowly and slowly stronger during the 18th century, especially after Plassey and Buxar, 1757, 1764, they become very, very stronger. And you can also write about, nobles rose in the court. So in the court of Mughal, the power of the nobles, the so-called advisors, they were even now playing a role of a kingmaker. They were even stronger than the king. So that actually became a bit of a problem. So this is something we have to understand. Clear? So Aurangzeb was partly responsible. I'm not denying that, but the empire fall was the result of deeper systemic issues we have to understand, like Jagirdari crisis, or nobles not under the control, succession struggles were there, and we saw a lot of regional and foreign powers, of course. So Aurangzeb was a catalyst, but not the sole cause of Mughal decline. So this is how you conclude that. That is how a balanced conclusion should be looking. When you end an answer, it should look like you have literally concluded that particular thing. So that is something which comes with practice. And I can tell you that, if your content is good, if you have good command over your content, you will be in a position to write these answers. I can assure you this thing. So overall yahi hai ki aapke content pe kitni pakad hai. This is one thing. Having said that, now let's move to the last one. Okay. So we talk about the question number 5, the final one from the history part. It says, what was the difference between the moderate and the extremists in the international movement? So in a way, it is asking about when the rise of the Congress is there. So how do you see moderates and extremists? So this is very much important. So having said that, international movement is witnessing emergence of two ideological streams. We know that, hai na? Moderates and extremists. So ultimately, they're focusing on the upliftment of India, no doubt about that, but they are differing in their approach, in their methods, in the perception of the British rule. So this is one thing we have to understand. In a way, moderates and extremists, they are totally different. So they are both having different ideology altogether. And having said that, you can simply write about this thing that, between 1885 to 1905, we have moderates very much strong. You can mention a few names, Dadabhai Naoroji, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, and you can even mention about Surendra Banerjee, or, all these people. So they are believing in what? Gradual reforms through constitutional methods. They did follow this policy of PPP, prayer, petition, and constitutional protests only, or 3P, you can call it, whatever. So they had faith in the British system, and they always focus on petitions, speeches, and appeals, as I've told you. So they wanted to have everything achieved through dialogue, which is not always possible. So ultimately, they did not want they did not demand complete independence. They were telling about the self-rule within the British. And ultimately, their followers were very much modern, urban, educated, middle-class elites. That is what the following of, moderate was coming from. Whereas when we talk about the extremists, so they are coming into prominence during the partition of Bengal movement. They had a bit radical approach. They were focusing on the masses, commoners, common people. So we had leaders like Lal Bal Pal, we have Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Lala Lajpat Rai, and Bipin Chandra Pal. They rejected the idea of the British rule could be reformed from within. So that's why they exposed all the exploitative practices, and they did demand Swaraj. And most importantly, they always boycotted British goods. They promoted Swadeshi. They had passive resistance like the mass movements. So you can give example of Swadeshi movement as well. And they managed to engage wider section of Indian society, the lower middle class or the other masses as well. So they were more appealing to them. So that is one thing you have to understand. So question asks for what? Yehi to pooch raha hai. So what is the difference between moderate and extremists? You tell about the mass base, you tell about their demands, you tell about the working method. So you're good to go. So that is also very much important. So once you're done, so you can write that, moderates provided the early ideological and institutional foundation for what? Internationalist movement. And extremists infused it with mass energy and urgency. So yeah, you don't have to demean the moderates. You have to tell that it was need of the hour. Initially, they went slow and extremists then paced up. So Indian freedom struggle evolved by synthesizing or amalgamating both the approaches. Especially under Gandhi's leadership, we had combination of constitutionalism and mass movement. Even civil disobedience also we did in that is breaking the civil laws, like breaking the salt law in 1930. We did that also. 1930, 1931 we were doing that also. So you just have to make sure whenever you write an answer, you have to stick to the demand of the question. That's one thing. There may be a chance that you don't know exactly what you are supposed to write, but trust me, even if you have basic knowledge of that particular topic, you can write something on it, because you have to ultimately write 200 words each. You don't have to write essays. So these were the 5 questions. That is question number 1, which came, they are all questions of history. So question number 1 is history only, then comes geography, then comes economy, then last mein hota hai polity. So that is how 20 questions are there in a way. So 4 into 5. So 4 questions there, but each have 5 parts. So I consider we have 20 questions. So 20 questions are, what all you have in this paper of general studies. And these 20 questions you have to, they give you 100 marks and you have to do in 3 hours. So in a way, I always say that if you have 3 hours, that is 180 minutes. So you have to, use that time very much judiciously. Always remember this thing. So even if you are going to attempt it next year, you have to have this idea in your mind that, since you have 20 minutes, so you have 20 questions. So you have to focus that for each question, you have just 9 minutes. 8 to 9 minutes. So 8 to 9 minutes में writing a 200 words answer, trust me, it is not that easy task. So you have to be very much prudent in your revision. And these topics, be it Buddhism, Jainism, be it Gupta, be it Cholas, be it Aurangzeb give us a decline, or even modern extremism, they were very much prominent topics of modern, ancient and medieval. They are not very obscure topics. So you just have to make sure that these aspects, you need this particular topic. So just remember one thing, that each question has to be written in 8 to 9 minutes whenever you're attempting the paper. Only then you'll be in a position to complete the paper. Nahi to paper chhoot jayega. Always remember this thing. So thank you so much for joining. You can contact on this numbers in case of any doubts and queries you guys have. So I'll be going off the screen. You can have a look at this number. And make sure you subscribe to the channel if you are new to this channel. Do share it with your friends if you liked it, and hit the like button. I'm sure you found this session a bit useful. So that's me, Akash and Dev, signing off. I hope you have enjoyed this session. I'll be bringing a session on economic questions as well. So we'll be discussing that also in this manner. Thank you so much. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.